Hi there, it's tulip season again in the Netherlands, and in this video I'm gonna teach you how to post-process your tulip images. I am from the Netherlands and I've been photographing tulips for many years, and I have a big article on my website on how to do that, so definitely check that out. I put a link in the description below, but this video is about post-processing of tulips. And we're gonna post-process different kinds of images. We're gonna do one where we use focus stacking to get all the tulips from the front of the camera to all the way in the back in focus so that we get a very nice 3D feeling in the image. We're gonna do a very dreamy image in where we focus on just one or two tulips. And then we're gonna do also a drone image, teach you how to get the best quality from drone tulip images. So let's get started right away. Before we get started, I do like to mention that I have a full editing course on landscape photography available on my website on edityourlandscapes.com. There are already many happy students in this course, and basically it takes you through my whole process on editing landscapes and cityscapes images from start to finish. There's Lightroom, there's Photoshop, other software. And I do recommend you to watch this lecture, My Vision on Photo Editing. Everyone can just watch that before you continue on watching this YouTube video, simply because it explains my vision on photo editing and how I edit my work and how I look at photos and about my principles and all that. It gives you a little bit of extra information on my editing process. So, of course, if you like my teaching style and like my editing, you can of course buy this course. If it's not what you're looking for, you're welcome to request a refund within 30 days, no questions asked. So definitely check that out if you're really into editing photos and want to get the most out of your raw files. Okay, so let's start editing some tulip images. So here we are in Lightroom and we are going to work on this tulip image, and you can already see I am super close to these tulips in the foreground. When we press I on the keyboard, we can see the information about the shot. I was shooting at 16mm with the 1635 G Master, f11 aperture and a little bit slow shutter speed because it was already getting a little bit, well, kind of during sunset, twilight. You can see a little bit pink clouds, slightly pink. We can enhance that a little bit in post-processing, but even on f11, when I focus on the foreground here, the rest is all out of focus. And because I wanted the shot sharp from front to back, I took a series of shots, 4 images with different focal points. I did that manually. And you can see focusing a little bit further every time I take a shot. And then we can combine that in Photoshop. Unfortunately, Lightroom cannot do focus stacking, not upon recording this video. Maybe in the future it probably can, but for now we will have to use Photoshop. Now, if you want to learn how to do this in the field, of course you can watch my course, or you can simply check my other YouTube video. I explain it in detail. Some cameras can do it automatically, but during this time, I did it manually. I simply focused on this tulip. I took a picture. I focused on this tulip. I took a picture. I focused a little bit further. I took a picture, and I focused on the turbines in the back and took a picture. In total 4. Sometimes you need a little bit more. But what's very important is that you need almost no wind. So you can see here they are moving a little bit. That's usually fine, but if they're moving a lot, then of course you cannot do focus stacking because you cannot overlay the images. Well, let's get started editing. So basically, if we want to do the focus stacking technique, what I usually do is I edit the image first in Lightroom. I do most of my edits and then I do the focus stacking. So I take an image, maybe the second one, where a lot of stuff is in focus. I can see most of the stuff, the colors and everything, and I start to edit. So you can see I already increased the exposure a little bit because it was a little bit dark. But other than that, I did nothing. You can see the histogram perfectly fits here. It's not clipping on the blacks, not clipping on the highlights. So let's get started to edit this. Before we do any changes in colors and contrast, I want to fix that horizon a little bit. You see it's a little bit curved, a little bit distortion. So we go here to lens corrections, enable profile corrections, and remove chromatic aberrations. While the vignetting, I kind of like that, so I'm gonna just pull it back a little bit, let that in. So now the horizon is kind of straight, and to make sure it's completely straight, we go here into the angle tool and just basically drag it from left to right. All right, now that is straight. So let's look into the colors a little bit. I'm gonna basically pull them to the right all the way. That's a little technique that I often use to see what's going on in the colors. It's super vibrant now. So if I change the white balance, I can see exactly what is going on. So I think I'm gonna put it a little bit here. It was already a little bit of blue hour, twilight, a little bit. I like the pinks a little bit in those clouds. So I'm gonna leave it a little bit at that and then basically pull them back. And then I'm sure that my color is kind of a good starting point, how I want it to be. And I can increase my vibrance and in this case also my saturation. I want it a little bit because I want everything a little bit more saturated. And then I'm gonna pull the highlights down a little bit, get some detail in the sky here and increase the shadows a little bit to get a little bit more shadow detail, maybe slightly more exposure. You have to be a little bit subtle here because it's a twilight mood kind of. Want to push the histogram maybe a little bit to the right here. Okay, can decrease the shadows a little bit more. That's looking quite nice, the color, just some very subtle adjustments. And usually before I start an image, I already kind of have in my head how I want it to look. I want it to look a little bit dreamy, that's kind of my style, but still a little bit punchy and dreamy, both of them. So I want to slightly more exposure. And then I want to make the sky maybe a little bit more colorful and darker. So I'm simply gonna make a new mask here. I'm gonna press this button here, a linear gradient, pull it over the sky here and give it a little bit more color and maybe a little bit more purple to kind of match it more with the colors of the tulips. So I like to work a little bit with color harmony. And here we have these purples coming in the sky, coming back here in the tulips. Maybe even a little bit more purple. If we check that before after, we see we are matching that color a little bit with the tulips. Can do it maybe a little bit more dark, a little bit more saturated, something like that. And you see the sky is really matching with the color of the tulips now. Yeah. Okay. Then here, I think the image is a little bit flat. So I want to maybe make another gradient at the bottom. I'm just simply gonna press M for that. M is the shortcut for the gradient mask. I pull a big one here at the bottom and make it a little bit darker so that we kind of have a gradient leading into those tulips. Make it a little bit darker. That's not it. A little bit darker here. And pull the blacks up a little bit. Let's check the before after. Maybe it's slightly too dark. Just a little bit so that we have kind of like a flow in the image. Here it's a little bit darker. At the bottom it's a little bit darker. Slightly less contrast. Slightly more vibrant. And it's all about your vision and your feeling with the image and what you want to show, obviously. Like me, I really like colors, but some people, they might like it really desaturated, like this. It's all about your vision. Okay, so I kind of like this. I think that's nice. It's a good starting point for the focus stacking. So now what we can do to copy all these edits to the different shots, we select my shot here, shift click everything here, synchronize, make sure check all, everything is selected, including the masks. And now they're synced, but we also have to sync it on this one. So again, shift click, synchronize. So now they're all the same, but let's check the exposure. This one is good. but we can see this one a little bit darker, so increase the exposure a little bit. We just want to make sure they are roughly the same. This image is way darker, so again, gonna increase the exposure a little bit. Okay, so now we can focus stack these images. So how we do that, we select the first one, shift click all of the images, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So open as layers in Photoshop. Click it. Then Photoshop will open and will import all of these photos as layers. So you see them pop up here on the right. And here they are. So the one at the bottom is the furthest one. The one at the top here is the closest tulip, the closest focus. So now what we need to do is we select all the layers, edit, auto align layers, just press auto, press OK. Now why we need to do that is because once we change the focus point, there's a slight zoom in the image, and this is called focus breathing. Almost all lenses have this, well, issue, you could say. And if we go back into Lightroom, we can see that the zoom is slightly changing when we change focus point. And when we auto align the images in Photoshop, Photoshop will basically overlay them again properly. You see, properly aligned. And then we can press edit, auto blend layers. Just press stack images, seamless tones and colors, content aware. Well, then it fills in those areas. Let's just turn that on. You don't have to turn that on, but let's just do that so it fills the edges, and mostly it does a good job. So you do edit, auto align, and then edit, auto blend. And Photoshop will automatically detect in the different images what's in focus and what's not, and will place masks here. You see it placed mask, and it does actually a very good job. And even the windmills, the wind turbines are masked in very well. Wow, it did a super good job. And you can see here on the edges, it's a little bit blurry because there is still that image from the edge that was, out of focus. So you do always have to crop in the images a little bit. So here's on top is the merged image. I can basically just transform it, Command T, and make it a little bit bigger to just remove that out of focus edge. Let's make it a little bit, something like that. And now you can see everything from front to back is perfectly in focus. Photoshop did actually a very good job. And well, it's very nice. So little trick. Now I was pointing down the camera from up a little bit, so you can see all the turbines. They are not that straight, but I do like the effect in the foreground here a little bit with the tulips. Now that the focus stack is complete, I usually just select all those images, merge layers. That saves a lot of disk space on your hard drive. And then what we can do, a little trick, let's duplicate that. We can use a tool, it's called Warp Perspective. Perspective Warp, it's in the Edit module, Edit Perspective Warp. And you can select different parts of the image. So I'm gonna select the top part of the image with all the turbines and the bottom part, because I wanna change those parts. And then I can press Warp here on the top right. And what I can do is I can then warp the image based on these lines. So I can now straighten those turbines. So actually, if I straighten this, that turbine is gonna be very close to the edge. And I'm gonna actually pull this down a bit as well, the tulips. Just warp the image a little bit to straighten those turbines. And that is looking much better. You see, now the turbines are straight. Is my horizon still straight? Let's just double check that. Not entirely. So I'm gonna go here to the crop tool, make sure to have original ratio, and then straighten the image. Now it's completely straight again. Press enter, and then we can actually use the spot healing brush tool here to maybe remove that turbine here, because that is very close to the edge. And now there's a little bit more harmony in the photo. So yeah, that's a very good focus tag. Now what I usually do, I just save it, Command S, and then it will go back into Lightroom. Let's see, my image is here back into Lightroom. And then if I want, I can do some more changes, more vibrant, maybe, work a little bit on my greens here. Saturation of the greens maybe a little bit less, and the hue I can change it a little bit, to make a better color harmony. Maybe in the tone curve I can, pull up the blacks just a tiny bit and add slightly more contrast, just only a tiny bit. I don't want to overdo it. And here as well in the sky, again, make a radial gradient here in those purples and maybe make them even a little bit more purple. And at the top, maybe a little bit darker. Well, I'm doing this all quite fast now, just because I don't want to make this video too long, but it's all about the small changes. And in the end, you have an image that looks kind of how you want it to look. And the most important thing is to take breaks. You take a break, you come back and you think, oh, maybe I overdid it a little bit, or oh, maybe I want to add some more color. But I like how this image looks. Nice purple tulips, nice purple sky. It's kind of in harmony. And yeah, nice result. Maybe a little bit less on the clarity, a little bit more dreamy. It's a little trick to, remove some of that very sharp edges. And if we look at before, so here is the image. Well, we can revert it back to before. Oh, that's very dark. Let's increase the exposure a little bit. That's kind of before. And then after, focus stacked image. Yeah, so getting it right in the field is very important with these focus stacked images. Get very close to your tulips. You get super close to the foreground with 16mm lens, then you get kind of that 3D feel with the endless sea of tulips, and you can get results like this. So I hope you like this edit, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's continue editing another tulip photo, and this one is completely different. This one is a very dreamy photo, and I want to edit it in a very, very dreamy way. And it's kind of a close-up of this single tulip that is in front of the whole crowd, you could say. It's always interesting what kind of ideas people have with photos of nature, but this is kind of how I see it. This is a single one, maybe performing in front of this crowd. So I want to separate this tulip from the crowd behind. And how I shoot these images, often you don't even need some macro lens or a 2.8. No, I shot this with a 100-400 at f5.6, but I'm standing very far away. So I'm zooming almost as much as I can. I open up the lens and I still get this very dreamy photo. So the trick is to stand far away, zoom in a lot, and then open up your lens. Make sure you have a fast shutter speed, of course, because you're you get a lot of vibrations with zooming a lot. So let's get started on this image. So like I said, I want to edit it a little bit dreamy. You can see I underexposed it, so I don't have any clipping highlights. If I pull the exposure down, you can see I have all the detail here in the sky. So I have these yellows. That's why I underexposed it slightly. So I'm gonna now increase the exposure a bit again. Something like that, and decrease the highlights a little bit, maybe even a little bit of less contrast, increase the shadows a little bit, and straighten it a little bit because it seems it a little bit tilted. something like that. I mean, this guy is already tilted a little bit to the right, but now I think is more straight, maybe even a tiny bit more, something like that. Maybe slightly more saturation. That looks good to me. Now the rest we are gonna do with radial and gradient tools. So I want to put all the focus on this guy here in the middle. So I'm gonna use a mask, a gradient mask here at the bottom. Put it a little bit like that. Make that a little bit darker to put more focus. We're gonna do everything to put more focus here in the middle. That, then a radial, maybe a big radial. We can press Shift M for that, is the shortcut. Big radial tool, maybe slightly increase the exposure only a little bit and increase the saturation by a lot, so we get all the colors here in the middle, maybe even more, something like that. We get much more focus here in the middle. And what I want to do, actually maybe we can even the temperature a little bit warmer. What I want to do, I find this white edge here very distracting. So this is the part where I'm gonna do some dreamy stuff. Yeah, that I really like to do. Before I do that, let's look, the image is slightly green, so maybe a little bit more magenta here. I do like the greens in these leaves here, so again, I'm gonna make a radial, maybe only around these leaves here, and increase the saturation, get a little bit green on those leaves. Let's check, just ever so slightly. Yeah, that looks quite nice, but I don't like this part here. Then I'm just gonna subtract brush, subtract something from this mask. Lightroom is now so powerful with its masking tools. Brush, maybe even a little bit more. More. Like that. And then this part, I'm gonna actually make a big radial gradient. Again, Shift M. Put it here. And then we're gonna use the dehaze slider to the other side and see what it does. It creates this very dreamy, like source of light, we can call it, a little bit light. It looks like the sun is coming from there. It is actually coming from there, but in the photo, it's making it much more dreamy. We can put that kind of here, the top right. Even make it a little bit bigger, that big, the highlights, so we can pull back the highlights a little bit to get that yellow again. Actually, I'm pressing Command minus to make it a little bit smaller so I can see what's happening here. Actually, we can pull it over the whole top of the image maybe. That looks quite nice to bring back those yellows. Then increase the exposure of the image a little bit and take another one and put that here and increase the exposure a bit. And maybe a little bit more. That's actually too bright. I want to get rid kind of these hard edges here. I don't like them that much. So I can do it with this trick, maybe something like that. That's quite good. Now a little bit less contrast, image a little bit more magenta. I think something like that, starting to look nice. So if we check the before and the after, it looks already very dreamy. But what we can do, again, like here, the soil, I don't know, it looks kind of a little bit greenish. Can make maybe a little bit more purple, something like that. See, yeah, that's better. Looks already very dreamy. I like the shot, but I want to finish it off in Photoshop a little bit. Before we do that, maybe put some more saturation in those reds here. Reds, oranges. You can also change the hue of the yellows and oranges. Maybe a little bit. No, it's okay actually. Something like that. Then I go into Photoshop, edit in Photoshop. We're gonna bring this shot in Photoshop. Let's see. And then I'm just gonna take a brush, make it really big, and take this color, yellow, make it a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more orange. New layer, layer, new layer, glow. And I'm gonna just paint here. And now you see, now we're getting really that dreamy look that I want by simply using that brush in Photoshop. And I'm using the hotkeys 1, 2, 3 to pick opacity. Here you can see the opacity, 20%. And that is looking to me more what I wanted. Removing kind of that hard edge of those flowers. Let's look at the hue of the whole image a little bit. Kind of want it a little bit like that. Let's keep playing with the color balance and the saturation. Let's check before, after. I'm pressing Option, click on the background to find this edge a little bit. Let's create a new layer. Remove this here with the spot healing brush tool. Remove some distractions. This edge is a little bit harsh, so let's select this again, make a new layer, call it soil. Use my brush with different opacity to kind of paint in a little bit here to make that foreground a little bit softer, something like that. See how that made the foreground softer. So this is how you create more dreamy look using the soft brushes to your image. Check the color balance a little bit. Something like that. Before, after. Some Photoshop edits. Save it. And bring it back into Lightroom. Let's wait 1 second. There it is. And there we have maybe a little bit blue actually. What if we pull a gradient, pull over this side and make this side a little bit more blue. Yeah, that's a little bit better color contrast. But yeah, you have to see it, and it's all about your own vision and whatever you like. So let's go to this image. This was the finished one in Lightroom. Let's duplicate that, create virtual copy, and basically remove all the edits. So this was the before, this was the after in Lightroom, and this was the after in Photoshop. After in Lightroom, after in Photoshop. Before, after, and with the brush, especially with the brush, you can create this super dreamy look. So yeah, this is how you can create these dreamy looks. Oh, let's continue to the next. Okay, so the last photo of this video, a drone image, and drone photos always, you know, they are a little bit different. They require a little bit of different treatment. So first thing we notice always with drone images is that often they are a little bit hazy. They require more contrast to get like this popping colors out of it. And here in this photo, we see this beautiful tulip field, and actually there's more beautiful fields going kind of from bottom left to top right. But yeah, the image is quite hazy. So if we go to our basic adjustments and we simply go to the dehaze slider, we already get, the dehaze slider often works quite well in drone images. So we're removing some of that haze, but now the colors, they don't look that nice, and the contrast. So I'm gonna increase the shadows a little bit, decrease the highlights a bit, and I find the photo a little bit too blue, so I'm gonna warm it up much more. And let's just pull these sliders again to the right so that we can kind of see what's going on with the colors. So we're gonna use the tint and the white balance kind of to where I think the color balance is decent, which is here. Bring them back, add some vibrance and saturation. And now, in a very quick way, with some dehaze and some contrast, we're getting a much better representation of these tulip fields. But still, I find it a little bit blue, the photo. So, especially the greens. I don't like the greens that much. So I'm gonna adjust them a little bit in the HSL panel. Here, go to the greens, change the hue a little bit, change them to yellow. Maybe even just select those. Yeah, that's now I like the greens more. So this is more blue, and you see the aqua and the greens are affected here on the right. And this is a green that I like more. The nice thing about these drone photos from top down with all of these colors of tulips, that we can just adjust the colors separately. So we can change the hue of the yellows a little bit to orange. We can increase the saturations of the reds a little bit. So now the fields, they really pop. If we want, we can even decrease the saturation of the greens so that the colors of the tulip fields pop much more. So increase the vibrance a little bit more. And now, if we look at the before and the after, this is so much better already in terms of color. And actually, I really don't like this factory in this blue here on the bottom left. It's very distracting. I just want this line of tulip field. So I'm simply gonna crop out that whole part. And let's make it straight as well. Something like that, crop out. And I just want these tulip fields from the bottom left. Now the image is so much more clean. The lines are straight. Let's increase the white a little bit here. And like, look at how it's popping right now. Maybe slightly less. Okay, this I really like. Before, after, maybe even a little bit more contrast. Again, it's completely up to you. Maybe you already find this too much. I quite like it. Because of all the saturation and vibrance, the blues are a bit strong. So let's desaturate the blues. We don't need these blues. So now I really like the image. But because we did quite some post-processing in this drone image, we probably get quite some noise here. You see, if we zoom in more, there's quite some noise here. And we often have quite some noise in drone images. If we look at the info, press I, we see this is ISO 100. And already on ISO 100 in the drone images, we see quite a bit of noise. So that's why I take always 5 images with the drone. And this I shoot on burst mode. So I don't put it on single shot. I put it on burst mode of 5 shots, and some drones can even do 7 shots. And with burst, you take 5 of the exact same photos, but the noise pattern in all of these photos is different. So what we can do via a technique called noise stacking, we can remove all of the noise out of these drone images via a very simple technique. So I edited this image, so I'm gonna just copy all of the edits, synchronize, make sure masking is turned on, even though I don't think I did any masks. Now all of the edits are on all of these photos. And what we need to do is right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Photoshop opens and displays here, slowly imports all of our photos as separate layers. And now all we need to do is select all of them, go to Edit, Auto Align Layers, press Auto. And we do this because the drone might have slightly moved in between your burst shots. I mean, it doesn't happen that much, but you know, every pixel counts here. So then they are all still selected. We're gonna convert them to a smart object. And then what we are going to do, we go to Layer, Smart Objects, Stack Mode, and we click Median. So now what it does is that it averages the noise pattern of all of these photos in this median equation, and we see a very clean image. So this is the result. So let's undo that and look how much more noise we have here. I mean, this drone image is not super noisy, but definitely if we look here and we redo that, almost all of that noise is gone and we have a super clean image. So this is not only for Tulip images, but for basically every drone image, especially if you're shooting higher than ISO 200. I recommend to shoot always in burst mode and get the most clean images possible. Now, if it's very windy, the burst mode might not be good because the drone is moving in between the bursts. But if you can, try to shoot in burst because you will get the most detail out of your drone images. So let's save the image, go back into Lightroom, we have it here. And again, we can basically go here and check this is the before, after, and there is a lot of difference in noise. I hope you can see that on YouTube, but this little trick, noise stacking, very important for drone images. That is if you want to print them and get the most clean result as possible. So yeah, that's 3 different techniques for your Tulip images: focus stacking, dreamy look, and noise stacking. I hope you can use these not only for your Tulip images, but for your landscape images in general. If you like this kind of stuff, if you like my work, you like my video, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm planning to do more of these, and also definitely check out my course if you like my editing and my style of teaching. Well, I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.